He rejected me because he said I was too fat and chubby. Should I forgive him because he wants to come back after seeing my great success?
The crowded restaurant buzzed with loud laughter and the sharp clinking of expensive glass. Chloe stood completely frozen in the center of the brightly lit room. Tonight was supposed to be a joyful celebration of Marcus's big promotion at his law firm. Instead, it was quickly turning into the worst nightmare of her entire life. If this is your first time here, subscribe and hit on notification button to ensure more sweet, soothing and life-changing stories of people's real-life experiences and African folk tales. Now let's delve deep. She held a small, neatly wrapped gift in her shaking hands. Marcus glared down at her, his face twisted in raw disgust. The background music seemed to stop entirely just as he raised his voice. "I can't do this anymore," he snapped, his harsh words cutting through the sudden quiet. "Look at yourself. I simply cannot marry someone who looks like this." A heavy, uncomfortable silence fell over the large room. Dozens of strangers turned their heads to stare. Some people gasped in shock, while a few cruel guests at the back actually chuckled. Chloe felt her cheeks burn with an intense, fiery shame. She noticed a bright flash of a smartphone camera from a nearby table. Someone was recording her pain for the internet. Marcus did not look away or apologize. He looked deeply embarrassed to even be standing near her. Chloe did not scream. That night, everyone believed her life was over, but what she did next would leave them speechless. Chloe slowly lowered the small gift onto the nearest table. Her chest felt incredibly tight, making it hard to take a single breath. She did not shed a tear in front of the watching crowd. Her heart shattered into a million sharp, painful pieces, but her face remained strangely calm. Without saying a single word to the man she had loved for 3 years, she turned around. She walked steadily toward the heavy glass exit doors. The whispers of the crowd followed her like a dark cloud. As she pushed the doors open, the cold night air hit her face, but she barely felt it. She walked her old, reliable car and sat in the driver's seat. Only then did her hands finally begin to tremble. The shock was slowly wearing off, replaced by a crushing wave of deep sorrow. She stared blankly at the steering wheel, replaying his cruel words in her mind. He had discarded her in front of 50 people, as if she meant absolutely nothing. She started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the brightly lit restaurant far behind. She did not know how she would survive the next day, let alone the rest of her life without him. To understand the deep pain of that night, one must know who Chloe truly was. She was not just a girl who was publicly humiliated. Chloe was a deeply kind, hard-working woman who always put others before herself. Growing up, she dreamed of running her own interior design business. She had a bright mind and a massive heart. When she first met Marcus, she was working 2 difficult jobs just to pay her college tuition. She spent her weekend volunteering at a local animal shelter and helping her neighbors. Everyone who truly knew Chloe loved her warm smile and her gentle spirit, but the world often judged her before she even spoke. She had always been heavier than the other girls. Because of this, she faced constant, quiet judgment from strangers. But Chloe never let the unfairness make her bitter. She chose to be supportive and loving. When Marcus lost his first job and had no money for rent, Chloe stepped up. She worked extra shifts at a noisy diner just to make sure he did not lose his apartment. She gave him her savings so he could buy a decent suit for his new job interviews. She built him up when he had nothing. Her kindness, however, rarely protected her from the cruel realities of society. Throughout her childhood, school bullying was a daily battle. Kids would hide her lunch or call her hurtful names during gym class. The pain did not stop at the schoolyard gates. Even at home, she felt the heavy weight of family pressure. Her aunts and cousins constantly made passive-aggressive comments about her diet during holiday dinners. Society's strict beauty standards were practically shouted at her from every magazine cover and television screen. They told her that she took up too much space and that she was not enough. Despite this heavy burden, Chloe tried to remain incredibly positive. She hid her tears behind a bright, cheerful laugh. She desperately wanted to believe that if she was just good enough, her appearance would not matter. She hoped that true love would look past the numbers on a scale. That was why Marcus had felt like a miracle when he first entered her life. He made her feel seen and valued in a world that usually tried to make her invisible. She gave him her entire heart, trusting that he would keep it safe from the cruelty she had always known. Their relationship began like a beautiful storybook romance. They met at a small, quiet coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday morning. Chloe had accidentally dropped her heavy textbooks, and Marcus rushed over to help her gather them. When she looked up, he offered her the most charming, warm smile she had ever seen. He seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts, her dreams, and her wild passion for design. He asked her out that very same day. During those early months, Marcus was incredibly loving and attentive. He bought her favorite flowers and took her on long, romantic walks through the city park. He often told her she was beautiful, and she finally started to believe it. He promised her a bright future, often talking about the house they would buy and the life they would share. He even hinted at marriage, making Chloe's heart soar with pure joy. She honestly believed he loved her exactly for who she was. She felt safe, secure, and truly cherished. It felt like all her painful years of feeling inadequate were finally being washed away by his deep affection. She thought she had found her forever partner, her protector against a harsh world. As their relationship deepened, Chloe fully dedicated herself to his success. She was his biggest cheerleader and his most loyal supporter. But her close friends started to notice tiny, concerning details. They gently warned her that Marcus seemed to care a little too much about appearances and social status. They noticed how he always wanted to be seen at the trendiest places. Chloe brushed their worries aside, defending him with fierce loyalty. She reminded them of how sweet he was in private. However, as Marcus began to climb the corporate ladder at his law firm, things slowly shifted. He started making more money and spending time with wealthier, flashier people. The charming man who helped her pick up books began to change into someone else. He became obsessed with his image and how others viewed him. Chloe tried to keep up, attending his fancy work events, and supporting his stressful career. But she always felt like an outsider in his new, polished world. The loving promises of marriage were replaced by vague excuses about timing and career focus. Chloe ignored the growing knot in her stomach, hoping it was just a temporary phase. She loved him too much to see the painful truth. The shift in his behavior became impossible to ignore. Marcus started subtly comparing Chloe to other women they saw on the street or on television. He would casually point out a slim actress and say how nice her outfit looked, adding a pointed sigh. Soon, the subtle hints turned into direct, painful jokes about her weight. If she ordered dessert after dinner, he would chuckle and ask if she really needed the extra calories. If she bought a new dress, he would suggest she buy a larger size because it looked a bit tight. Whenever Chloe expressed her hurt, he would quickly manipulate the situation. He told her she was being too sensitive and that he only cared about her health. He slowly started distancing himself emotionally and physically. He worked late almost every single night and spent his weekends golfing with his new, wealthy friends. Chloe spent most evenings alone in their shared apartment, waiting for a man who barely looked at her anymore. The dramatic tension in their home grew thick and suffocating. She walked on eggshells, desperately trying to please him and win back the loving boyfriend she once knew. She starved herself for days, but nothing she did was ever enough for him. The public betrayal did not happen entirely out of nowhere. It was a slow, painful build-up. For weeks, Marcus had been extremely secretive with his phone, always placing it face down on the table. He changed his passwords and became easily angered when Chloe asked about his day. Then came the night of his big promotion party at the upscale downtown restaurant. Chloe had spent hours getting ready, wearing a beautiful blue dress she hoped he would finally notice. When she arrived at the venue, she immediately sensed that something was terribly wrong. Marcus was standing near the bar, laughing with a stunning, incredibly thin woman in a tight red dress. He was leaning in close, his hand resting casually on her lower back. Chloe approached them, her heart pounding loudly in her chest. The moment Marcus saw her, his smile completely vanished, replaced by a look of sheer annoyance. He did not introduce her to the woman. Instead, he pulled Chloe aside, his grip on her arm tight and uncomfortable. The whispering among his co-workers began immediately. Chloe could feel their judgmental eyes burning into her back. The air in the room grew completely still as the nightmare finally began to unfold. The woman in the red dress was introduced to others as Vanessa, a new junior partner at the firm. It was blindingly obvious to everyone in the room that Marcus was infatuated with her. When Chloe tried to give Marcus his promotion gift, the big emotional explosion finally happened. He humiliated her publicly, loudly declaring that he deserved much better. He looked at Vanessa, then back at Chloe, making his cruel choice clear to the entire room. He stated he needed a partner who fit his new, successful lifestyle, someone he'd be proud to show off. He left her standing there, completely heartbroken and utterly humiliated. The strong emotional beats of that moment echoed in Chloe's mind. The heavy silence of the crowd, the sharp sound of people whispering behind their hands, the blinding flash of a stranger recording the horrific moment on a phone. The humiliation spread through the room like a fast-moving wildfire. Marcus turned his back on her and walked over to Vanessa, leaving Chloe entirely alone in a sea of staring strangers. He had destroyed 3 years of love and sacrifice in less than 3 minutes, simply because she did not look the way he wanted. After leaving the restaurant, Chloe hit absolute rock bottom. The story slowed down into a quiet, painful darkness. She spent the first few days locked entirely inside her small bedroom. She cried until her eyes were swollen shut and her throat ached. The silence of her apartment was deafening without his footsteps or his voice. She refused to turn on the lights, preferring the comforting blanket of the dark. She ignored her ringing phone, letting calls from worried friends go straight to voicemail. She felt completely worthless, utterly discarded like a piece of useless trash. Every mirror in the house became her worst enemy, reflecting a body she had been taught to hate. She replayed his cruel words thousands of times in her tired brain. She genuinely believed that no one would ever love her, that she was fundamentally broken and ugly. Viewers of her life would easily believe that this tragic moment would break her forever. It seemed like she would fade away into shadows and sadness. But sometimes, hitting the cold, hard rock bottom is exactly what a person needs. Because once you are at the very bottom, there is only one direction left to go. On the 5th day of her deep depression, Chloe finally picked up her phone. She slowly opened her photo gallery, her thumb hovering over the screen. There were hundreds of pictures of her and Marcus smiling, traveling, and hugging, with tears streaming down her face. She pressed the delete button. She deleted every single photo, erasing him from her digital life. She stopped going out entirely, ordering groceries online, so she wouldn't have to face judgmental strangers. She unfollowed his friends on social media and blocked his number. She wanted to disappear. For weeks, she survived purely on instant soup and tap water. Her vibrant, kind spirit was completely crushed under the heavy weight of his public rejection. She felt like a ghost haunting her own life. She stopped sketching her design ideas and threw her colorful fabrics into a dark closet. The pain was a physical weight on her chest, making it hard to stand up straight. She believed the cruel lies he had shouted at her in that restaurant. She thought the story of her life was over, completely ruined by a man who could only see skin deep. But deep within that crushing darkness, a tiny spark of pure anger began to ignite. One rainy morning, Chloe stood before the full-length mirror in her bathroom. She stared at her tired eyes, her messy hair, and her pale skin. Instead of a deep desire for revenge or a path of self-destruction, she felt something new. She felt a profound sense of self-respect rising from the ashes of her broken heart. She realized she had spent her entire life trying to shrink herself to fit into other people's tiny expectations. She made an unexpected decision right then and there. She chose personal transformation, not to win Marcus back, but to finally win herself back. She decided she would never let another human being determine her worth. She wiped the dried tears from her cheeks and took a deep, steadying breath. She was not going to starve herself to fit a dress size. She was going to build a life so big and beautiful that his rejection would look like a tiny, meaningless pebble. She walked into the kitchen, threw away the junk food, and drank a glass of cold water. This was not about revenge against a cruel man. This was about a rescue mission for her own soul. The turning point had officially arrived. Her journey began with small, quiet steps. Chloe started waking up early every single morning to walk at the local park. She did not run or push herself to exhaustion. She just moved her body to feel alive again. She put on headphones and listened to podcasts about business, self-love, and healing. She slowly began to rebuild her shattered confidence, piece by piece. She returned to her forgotten passion for interior design, pulling her sketchbooks out of the dark closet. She spent hours studying color theory, space management, and modern architecture. She stopped seeking validation from the scale and started finding joy in her own creativity. She bought fresh, colorful vegetables and learned to cook nourishing, healthy meals for herself. She joined a local community college to finish her business degree, sitting in the front row of every class. She ignored the lingering whispers in her own mind that told her she was not enough. Every time a negative thought crept in, she replaced it with a bold vision of her future. She was channeling all her pain, anger, and sadness into an unstoppable fuel for her own success. She was becoming the hero of her own story. The path to transformation was not an easy, magical montage. Chloe faced brutal hard work and deeply discouraging setbacks. There were cold mornings when she wanted to stay in bed and cry. There were days when she looked in the mirror and still heard Marcus's cruel laughter echoing in her ears. She faced rejection when she applied for loans to start her own design firm. Several banks turned her away, telling her she lacked the proper experience. Some old acquaintances still viewed her as the sad girl who got dumped in public. But Chloe refused to give up. Her determination was forged in the fire of her past humiliation. She started taking small freelance jobs, decorating tiny apartments in local cafes for very little money. She worked late into the night, covered in paint and with dust. She documented her entire journey online, sharing her raw struggles, her design tips, and her message of self-love. She did not hide her past or her body. She showed the world exactly who she was. Slowly, people started to notice her incredible talent and her authentic voice. Every setback only made her push harder. She was building an empire from the broken pieces of her past. Years passed by like leaves falling in the autumn wind. 3 full years after that terrible night in the restaurant, Chloe's life was completely unrecognizable. The plot twist no one saw coming had finally arrived. She had not just healed, she had soared to incredible heights. Chloe was now the proud owner of a highly successful, award-winning interior design firm in the city. Her bold, colorful style had become the latest trend in luxury living. She had completely transformed her physical and mental health. She was strong, glowing with radiant confidence, and incredibly happy. Her online videos about combining beautiful design with genuine body positivity had gone massively viral. Millions of people followed her, inspired by her resilience and her refusal to let society crush her spirit. She was no longer the quiet, insecure girl holding a wrapped gift in a restaurant. She was a powerful, respected entrepreneur and a famous public figure. She had launched a national movement that helped women embrace their true worth, regardless of their size. She drove a beautiful car, lived in a stunning home she designed herself, and was surrounded by friends who truly loved her. She had completely won at life. As Chloe's star rose rapidly, Marcus's life had quietly begun to crumble. The promotion he had sacrificed Chloe for turned into a stressful nightmare of endless hours and toxic bosses. His relationship with Vanessa, the woman in the red dress, had ended bitterly after only 6 months. He soon realized that Vanessa only loved his title, not the man behind it. He found himself deeply miserable, drowning in credit card debt to maintain an image he could no longer afford. One rainy Tuesday, Marcus was waiting in line at a local grocery store. He glanced at the magazine rack near the register and froze completely. There, on the glossy cover of a premier national business magazine, was Chloe. She looked absolutely breathtaking, wearing a sharp emerald green suit radiating pure power and grace. The headline read, "Building Beauty from the Inside Out, The Unstoppable Rise of Design Queen." Marcus stared at her bright, confident smile, his heart dropping into his stomach. He bought the magazine with trembling hands. Reading the article, he realized the massive, unforgivable mistake he had made. He had thrown away a diamond because he was too foolish to recognize its true value. The shocking reunion happened a month later at a massive charity gala downtown. Chloe was the esteemed guest of honor, invited to speak about empowering young female business owners. The grand ballroom was filled with bright lights, expensive flowers, and the city's most elite residents. Chloe stood near the main stage, wearing a stunning, custom-made golden gown that hugged her strong curves perfectly. She laughed brightly, surrounded by admirers and wealthy investors. She practically owned the room. This was the moment viewers of her life had been eagerly waiting for. Marcus had managed to sneak into the event, desperate to see her with his own eyes. He stood in the shadows near the back of the room, feeling incredibly small and foolish. He watched her command the attention of everyone around her. She was confident, incredibly successful, and highly respected by people who would not even give Marcus the time of day. He felt a sickening wave of deep regret wash over his entire body. He remembered the loving, supportive woman who had paid his rent and believed in him when he had nothing. He knew he had to speak to her, even if it destroyed his remaining pride. Marcus slowly pushed his way through the elegant, crowded room. His hands were sweating, and his heart hammered violently against his ribs. He finally stopped a few feet away from Chloe, waiting for a break in her conversation. When she finally turned around, her eyes met his. For a split second, the loud music and the chatter of the gala seemed to fade away entirely. Marcus looked terrible. He was tired, slightly unkempt, and carrying the heavy weight of his failures. Chloe, on the other hand, looked like a shining goddess. She did not flinch, cry, or look away. She simply stared at him with calm, powerful eyes. "Chloe," he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. You look absolutely incredible." He stepped closer, his eyes pleading for a tiny drop of the kindness she used to freely give him. He expected her to yell, to cause a scene, or to call security. But she did none of those things. She remained perfectly still, her posture straight and proud. The power dynamic had completely shifted. He was now the beggar, and she was the queen. He swallowed hard, preparing to deliver the apology he had practiced hundreds of times in mirror. "I am so incredibly sorry," Marcus stammered, his eyes filling with desperate tears. "I was a complete fool. I was blind, stupid, and arrogant." The small crowd of people around them grew very quiet, sensing the sudden, heavy drama. Some recognized Marcus from the old days, remembering the horrible rumors of what he had done. "I lost my way," he continued, his voice shaking. "I let money and fake people get inside my head. But I never stopped thinking about you. I see now what I threw away." He took a deep breath, stepping even closer. "Please, Chloe, just give me one more chance. Let me show you that I've changed. I want us to be together again. I want the future we always talked about." He reached out, hoping to hold her hand. This was the massive climax. He was begging for forgiveness in front of the city's most important people. He wanted to ride the wave of her new success. The silence in the room was absolute. Everyone waited for Chloe to speak. Would she take back the man who broke her heart? Would she seek loud, angry revenge? The tension was thicker than a heavy winter fog. Chloe looked down at his outstretched hand, then slowly brought her eyes back up to meet his. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Her calm, steady tone carried more power than 1,000 angry screams. This was the moment that shocked everyone in the room. Instead of revenge, she offered a cold, absolute truth. "Marcus," she began, her voice perfectly clear, "you did not leave me that night because I was too fat. You left me because you were far too small." Marcus physically stepped back, as if she had struck him. "You left because you couldn't see my worth, and you needed a mirror that only reflected your own fragile ego." She smiled, but it was a smile devoid of any warmth. "I don't hate you anymore," she continued smoothly. "In fact, I should probably thank you. Your cruelty was the painful push I needed to finally realize I deserved the world. But you do not belong in my world anymore." She turned her back on him, picking up her glass of sparkling water. She resumed her conversation with a nearby investor, as if Marcus had simply vanished into thin air. She refused him entirely, cementing her ultimate victory. Marcus stood frozen, entirely humiliated in front of the silent, watching crowd. He had tried to reclaim a prize. he was never worthy of holding. With his face burning bright red, he slowly turned around and walked out of the grand ballroom, disappearing into the dark, rainy night. He would never bother her again. Chloe took a deep breath, tasting the sweet, clean air of absolute freedom. She felt a massive, invisible weight finally lift off her shoulders forever. She had faced her darkest nightmare and walked away completely unscathed. Justice was served not with anger, but with overwhelming, undeniable success. The satisfaction she felt was deep and warm. The audience in the room quickly returned to their joyful chatter, but they looked at Chloe with a new, profound level of respect. She had proven that true strength does not roar. It simply shines so brightly that the darkness cannot survive. She spent the rest of the deeply magical evening laughing, dancing, and celebrating her incredible life. She was no longer defined by the worst thing that had ever happened to her. She was defined purely by how beautifully she had chosen to rebuild her own shattered universe. Later that night, Chloe stood alone on the quiet balcony of the gala, looking out over the sparkling city lights. The cool wind brushed against her skin, and she smiled softly to herself. She thought about the young, insecure girl she used to be, the one who cried alone in a dark room. She wished she could go back in time and hug that broken girl, to tell her that everything was going to be more than okay. She had learned the most important lesson of all. True beauty is never found on a bathroom scale or in the shallow opinions of cruel people. It is forged in the fires of resilience, hard work, and unshakable self-belief. She had transformed her deepest pain into her greatest power. The journey had been brutally hard, filled with tears, setbacks, and lonely nights. But standing there, glowing with success and genuine happiness, she knew every single painful step was entirely worth it. She was proud of her mind, proud of her heart, and finally, deeply proud of her body. She had built a fortress of self-love that no man could ever tear down again. She was entirely complete, lacking absolutely nothing. Chloe's story spread rapidly across the internet the very next day. Someone had recorded the powerful exchange between her and Marcus at the gala. It became a massive viral sensation, shared by millions of women around the globe. Her firm gained thousands of new clients, and her message of body positivity reached even further. She received thousands of letters from people who had also been bullied, shamed, or abandoned. They thanked her for showing them that there is a beautiful life waiting after a broken heart. Chloe used her new massive platform to fund scholarships for young women entering the design field. She made sure that others who looked like her would never feel invisible or unworthy again. She proved that the best revenge is not causing pain to others, but finding massive, unstoppable peace within yourself. Marcus became a distant, fading memory, a minor character in the grand, epic story of her life. He was a storm that tried to drown her, but instead, he only taught her how to build a stronger ship. Her victory was absolute, not because she ruined him, but because she completely forgot him. As the years rolled on, Chloe continued to thrive and expand her beautiful empire. She eventually fell in love again, this time with a kind, gentle artist who loved every single part of her soul. He looked at her as if she hung the stars in the night sky. He never once mentioned her weight or compared her to anyone else. They built a warm, colorful home together, filled with loud laughter, rescue dogs, and endless joy. Chloe often looked back on that terrible night in the restaurant, no longer with sadness, but with a strange sense of quiet gratitude. It was the night her old life ended, making room for the incredible life she was always meant to live. She realized that sometimes the universe has to break your heart to save your entire soul. You have to lose the wrong people to finally find yourself. She stood tall, a living, breathing testament to the power of a woman who decides she has finally had enough. She had taken the heaviest, sharpest stones thrown at her and used them to build a massive, beautiful castle. She was the absolute master of her own beautiful fate. The final truth of Chloe's incredible journey is a lesson for anyone who has ever felt unloved or unworthy. Self-worth can never be granted by another person, and it can never be truly taken away by them either. It is something you must fiercely build and protect within yourself. Inner beauty will always outlast the changing, shallow trends of society. Growth after deep pain is not just a possibility. It is a promise if you are willing to do the hard work. When someone discards you, they are not determining your value. They are simply revealing their own blindness. Do not let the cruelty of others turn your warm heart cold. Instead, let it fuel your fire. Rise up, focus on your own brilliant light, and build a life that makes you genuinely proud. Because in the end, the ultimate victory is looking in the mirror and loving the person looking back at you. Sometimes the people who break you are the very same people who unknowingly push you toward a beautiful, incredible life you were always meant to live.